Hello, everyone. Just wanted to get this broadcast started. My name is Dominic. I am the founder and CEO of Shrlock. We are the only client management system that's purpose-built for HR consultants and fractional HR leaders. We got started with our product just over a year ago, and today we've got hundreds of HR consultants and fractional leaders on our platform using our system to manage their clients and grow their businesses. For those of you who are hearing about Shrlock for the first time, please go ahead and get out your phone, scan that QR code. We'll have you join the newsletter. This will make sure that you stay up to date. As I mentioned, this is the first webinar event that we're hosting, and we will be hosting a new webinar every single month, and all of our educational resources and programming will be oriented around the insights that are included in this report. So the challenges that we see, the opportunities we find for HR consultants, we're going to be structuring our educational programming around what this community really needs. So go ahead, if you haven't had a chance yet, scan that QR code and make sure to join the newsletter. I'm just going to do one last check-in to make sure we can get Sam in here. Sam, are you able to speak?
Me.
There we go. Hi.
Hi.
So glad to have you. Perfect timing. Glad to have you here. We're going to go ahead and introduce our participating partners. The survey that we conducted to get all of the rich benchmark data and insights came directly through promotion between Sam and Elles with their networks. I would love to introduce the both of them. They will do a better job of introducing themselves. So Elles, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
Sure, happy to. Sam, welcome. Thanks. Glad we got you on. Hi, everyone. I'm Elles Skony. I'm in Chicago. My journey, I have both my own organized chaos consulting and my own clients. I do consulting, fractional advisory work. And I also founded Fractional People, which is a community of my peers. So HR leaders with 10 plus years of experience in-house who are now out on their own, building their own businesses in the HR space through those same avenues: consulting, advisory, fractional, coaching, portfolio of revenue. So was super excited to get some data and talk through it with you all. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Elles. And then Sam, tell us who you are and what you do.
It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. I'm the founder of Mindability Consulting. I have been building HR consultancy businesses for over 25 years, so I've seen a lot of change in that time. I've been very fortunate in generating over $20 million through consultancy businesses in that time for businesses. And we now spend all of our time helping consultants and fractional HRs to build a successful business on their terms. So we do that through community, through coaching. We love everything that Dominic, that you're doing here, and we're huge fans of Elles and FPP and all the great work that she does too.
Likewise, Sam.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really so honored that we get to host our first event for this community and be joined by two of the HR consulting industry experts. With that said, Sam, Elles, are we ready to dive in?
Yes, we are.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So today we're going to be diving into the 2026 State of the HR Consulting Industry Report. Almost everyone on this call should have received access to this report just a few hours ago. If for some reason you registered for this event after that email went out, or you just don't see the email, you should be able to use this QR code, which will take you to a page to download the report. So if you haven't had access to the report, go ahead and download it now. I would love for you to follow along with the report as we start talking through each of these different sections. It would be super helpful, and we also can get better questions out of you. We won't be covering every single data point in the report. There's 25 pages, but we will do our best to make sure we orient the conversation around what people are interested in talking about today. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in with our first section of the report. Who are HR consultants today? We're seeing a majority of HR consultants who have started their businesses in the last 3 years. Many of them are working solo. Elles, I would love to kind of get your thoughts on this. I know that you interact with a lot of consultants early in their career. What is your perspective on what we're seeing with the HR consulting demographic?
HR consulting has been around, right? So it isn't anything new. I think there are some terms like fractional, as an example, that are more popular in the last few years, definitely. But there certainly is a shift in the HR ecosystem in general of people who have been in-house practicing, so operators, I think, and that being a lot of the profiles that you're seeing today who are entering the consulting and fractional market. And so, my lens specifically being in fractional people, you're talking about solopreneurs who have been operating their entire careers for 10, 15, 20 plus years. And now they're pivoting into being business owners. So certainly the definition and like the profiles are evolving as you see more operators get in the space.
Now, I do want to just touch on something. I know, Ellis, you have some strong opinions on what fractional HR leadership looks like. We do see from the respondents that about 44% of HR consultants do come with director level experience. How do you negotiate that?
Yeah, so I think like the definitions are really important that we talk about and educate on as more and more practitioners get into the space. I liked how this report focused on HR consultants as the title instead of like fractional HR, because fractional is one way that we do the work. Fractional is when you have an embedded leader in the organization for part of the time. So, the level, director level for a small company who doesn't have HR, they certainly can be that head of HR inside of a smaller organization. Put the title aside, like really what we're focused on is we want to make sure that we're a leader in the capacity in the organization that we're in. And we want to make sure that we've done the work before. So the benefit and the beauty of fractional or consultants or advisors is they have pattern recognition. So it's just important to define that like fractional HR is when you are embedded in an organization for part of the time. And it's the type of work you're doing. So you just want to make sure that you have the pattern recognition so you can go in and be valuable right away. So title aside, that's really an important piece. A leader who has done it before, who has that pattern recognition, who can create value really quickly for the client.
Thank you. Now, Sam, I want to get your perspective on something, because what we're seeing is that over 70% of HR consultants are quite early in their consulting careers. I know that you do a lot of coaching with HR consultants. I'm curious why you think we're seeing so much representation from consultants who are just getting started. What's your perspective there?
I think there's a huge shift, and that shift is going to continue, which is a lot of these kind of roles now can come away from the headcount. They can come away from the overhead. It's actually better for the organization and better for us as individuals in building our own company. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that, and that's why there are a lot more coming out. There's also just the very nature of what we do is changing and evolving, and has continued to change since the pandemic. And in fact, we're certainly seeing more of a shift from 2023 onwards in terms of the work an HR consultant does, and actually the responsibilities, both from a strategic perspective and an operational perspective, they have in their clients. And that, I think, is really exciting for us as a community moving forward. And we're also seeing more of the in-house HRs getting comfortable with saying, we need to scale up and scale down our resources during critical times of growth, pivot and changes. So personally, I'm not someone who says, isn't the world a wonderful place full of unicorn and rainbows, because I know it's not. But I do think from an industry perspective, this side of the fence, we're in a very good spot right now, and we're going to see more people continue to come out.
That's fantastic. Something that stuck out to me in this particular section is the number of part-time consultants who also report working in-house. I think it was 40% of consultants who say they're working part-time say that they are also fully employed somewhere else. And just to call out my own data, this report was sent to professionals who call themselves HR consultants, who call themselves fractional leaders, who are in HR consulting communities or using HR consulting coaching services. I think that we may even see the data underrepresenting the number of people who are engaging in this part-time consulting work from their full-time roles? I would love to, either one of you, if you had a strong opinion on that, to weigh in there.
I think a lot of people, there's a couple different profiles that come up for me when you ask that question, but there are people who are curious about how they might enjoy client work or like the project-based work. And so they're testing the waters. I think another profile that has been successful in then pivoting into the full-time work of it are the builders. So you have people who are in maybe in-house roles or companies where the work they're doing isn't fulfilling them. And so they're seeking the builds, the interesting problems, the challenges. And so they seek that outside of it because the security of the internal is important, and then test it in that way and then see like, oh, I am kind of good at this. And they can transition out with a little bit more of a safety, having that in-house, W-2 role.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just about to say, I agree with everything Elles said. And I think, again, the other thing that we're seeing, thank goodness, in the workplace is we've got something in our business club called half in, half out. And those are people who are in corporate still, who are building their runway. And more, actually, in-house HRs are feeling more comfortable to be able to say to their employers, look, this is what I want to do. And employers recognizing that by letting your employees go out and build a business on their side, they're actually bringing in new skills to your organization that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And that in turn is helping the in-house HRs who might decide to continue to have a foot in both camps to get their seat at the table, because now they can come look at it from a true entrepreneurial perspective as to what's happening in their own employment situations. And again, I think that can only be a win-win.
Absolutely. I talk to a lot of consultants, given the work that we do here at Shrlock, and it's not uncommon to encounter a consultant who left their in-house role and they didn't have any clients lined up, and they're sort of at this point where they're launching their consulting business. They don't have any stable book of business quite yet. And I think that can be a time where it can feel a little bit more uncertain. And so I definitely see how building up that clientele before you make the jump from in-house can definitely provide a little bit more stability and confidence as you're getting started. I'll go ahead and push forward from here just a bit, and we'll look at the clients behind the practice. I think that there's so much about the clients that you work with as a consultant that will definitely inform your business. So some things that are not surprising from this data: most HR consulting clients are under 100 employees. They tend to not have HR in place before they reach out. And they definitely do seem to span a few different industries. Something that stands out to me, though, is the top 3 industries we're seeing are nonprofits, tech startups, and professional services. My brain can't wrap my head around that because those industries don't seem to have much in common. I don't know if either one of you might have some insight to share here.
Yeah, I've never met as many people in the nonprofit space as I have the last few years, and it continues to evolve. And actually, the conversations I'm having with fractionals in the nonprofit space are kind of far and beyond a lot of the times in terms of the maturity of how they're thinking about it. So that surprised me, just again, because my background is in tech startups and advertising and e-commerce. But I think for the nonprofits, what I hear is that because they have the budgets are very transparent and known, right? So there's a set budget. And so you're really looking at it already having to have been board approved, forecasted out. And then they can really make those smart strategic decisions of what am I going to do with this money? And fractional is such a great fit for it. And so nonprofit, leaders that I talk to where I'm talking about fractional, it's kind of like a really quick aha for them once they learn about it. And then tech startups were not surprising to me just because, again, that's my background, but also they're going through a transition in the conversation that's happening in the boardroom from what's our burn rate to what's our path to profitability. And so with that, the pressure and the necessity to double click even further into your P&L and your personnel and resources, which are your highest cost, just becomes a necessity. And so fractional, again, is just a perfect solution for that a lot of the time. So the education in the market is really like where it just continues to need to be for companies and founders to recognize.
Absolutely. Stan, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I think this is already covered on it. The transparency of the non-profit sector is something that then becomes hugely aligned between what we're trying to do as HR consultants and fractional HRs in that community. I also think a lot of the non-profit sector are actually very innovative, as is the tech sector. And that's what few people don't recognize until they get into that non-profit sector, in terms of actually how they structure their sector, where they want to go with the business. And because so many of them are so nimble, they can really try things out. So again, it's not surprising to see that real balance between the non-profit and the tech sector. And also from a portfolio perspective, fractional HRs and HR consultants might well be giving a different rate for non-profits, and then they can increase their rates for other sectors such as the tech and tech startups. So it really gives them a balance in terms of margins as well. So yeah, to me, that made a lot of sense.
Now, a question. So I imagine for an early stage consultant, seeing something like this might tell them, oh, maybe that's where I should index my efforts. When you're working with consultants and they're considering targeting a specific industry, what advice would you provide to them?
I think first and foremost, it's about, if you are, for example, let's just take healthcare. The healthcare one came in at about 30%. If that's the sector you're looking to target, who do you know in your existing network who already has an established connection base in there that you can tap into? I think that the one downside of our consultancy and fractional industry growing so much is there are going to be more people who have people in that network already. So it's just going to take you longer to build those relationships,
Mhm.
Yeah, and I would add, it also depends on the type of work that you're trying to do. As an example, I do strategic and advisory work with my clients. And when I started, I was industry agnostic. And as I got into it and learned with every client along the way, I recognized, like, at the strategic end of it, knowing the business, as HR business partners know, is really much more valuable for your client. And so another kind of reflection I have people do is, like, what industries do you have experience in? Similar to Sam, like, that means that's your network, but also, like, where are you truly going to provide the most value the quickest? And if you know the business and you know the org and the pattern recognition is there, then regardless of what these stats say, like, work the industry that you know and have those strategic conversations about why that's the right setup for them, if it is.
I think that there's definitely consultants who come from very niche backgrounds and will lend themselves to targeting specific industries very well just because of their careers. That said, I think the things that most HR clients have in common is that they are small and don't have internal support, potentially have a smaller budget. And so I think that industry can be a great angle, but it doesn't have to be the defining angle for the business. Now, in terms of how HR consultants scale the business, this is probably no surprise to anybody, but 91% of respondents said that word of mouth and referrals are the top performing marketing channel for their business. And it's followed by networking events and associations and LinkedIn outreach. We're seeing very relationship focused growth that's happening for consultants. And we're not seeing a ton of performance-based marketing channels. I'd love to add some more color behind why that is. I think some of it might be more obvious and some of it might not.
I think as a whole, when we first start working with consultants, the first thing they do is, I hate selling. That's one of the first things we hear. So therefore, I'm not surprised to see some of the generating quality leads and that lower than I'd love it to be, because again, that's an art form. And I also think with what we do in our initial networks, particularly when you look at the demographic of this, saying the first 3 years, a lot of the business will come from an existing network. And then as you continue to grow a business, then you really understand the systems and processes around getting sales and getting more business from online. So yes, this makes total sense. And that to me is probably some of the reasons why. And I don't know what Ellis is hearing.
Yeah, I think on the relationship marketing, like the through line for me, and Sam and Michelle Warner and Allison Davis have all come in and talked to FPP about this as well. But you're focused on trust, like you're selling trust because you're selling yourself. If you're talking about it from the perspective of fractional HR leadership, let's use that as the lens. And so all of these things are relationship marketing and they're trust building. And so when you're thinking about which networking group you're going to join, you want to think about where your clients are. But when you're there, you're building relationships. Like that's the best way to do it. And when you're thinking about LinkedIn content, you want to get in front of the people who need your services or in front of the people that you want to remind that you're doing what you do. But you are trying to build trust with them through thought leadership, through building credibility. So if you're ever asking like, oh, is this a good use of my time? It's like, well, is this going to build trust in the market about my expertise and who I am? And if so, then maybe it's a good use of time. But really, that's kind of like the through line. You are being hired quickly most times and brought into a leadership role right away into an organization to manage and be responsible for their most important asset. And so if you're not trusted immediately, it probably isn't going to be something they hire you for. So that's why referrals, of course, are those like trust transfers of people mentioning you because they trust you. And then the person they know trusts you through the transitive property. I'm just making that up, but I use that term too much.
I love it. Yeah, no, I think that absolutely HR consulting by nature is a trust-driven profession. And so, of course, how they scale translates to that. But I do think that introduces some structural issues for scaling because maybe you don't have a network in place, or maybe your network isn't small enough to sustain the kind of growth you need to have a healthy practice. What would you say to a consultant who finds themselves in that situation?
Building that network is really important. And, absolutely what Alice said about we are not only selling trust, we are dealing with situations that business owners and leaders, as we all know, are very uncomfortable. And I often find that those who are in the biggest mess have actually done nothing wrong. They've tried to fix it. So often that is the case. Of course, we have toxic environments, but you can't build a business if you don't have a great network. And again, I think what we're seeing is a growing importance of having a good network, which is why I think things like fractional people are so important, because it's that network of people who are coming together, who are talking on a regular basis, who are being able to say, oh, I've got an expertise in this sector. Can anyone help with introductions over here? And I see that day in, day out in FPP. And I think that is by far going to be one of the biggest things that we see in terms of success factors for fractionals and HR consultants in 2026, finding and building their own community and network, both in terms of peers and potential clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something to add also, yes, and the volume is like an important thing to talk about, right? Because typically with performance marketing, we're not selling millions of widgets, right? Like we don't need hundreds or thousands of clients in a year. We can't handle that. And like you can grow a team and that's a thing, and scale and all the things. Yes. But like as a core conversation for since a lot of this had solopreneurs in the data, we need 6 to 8 solid clients in a year and we make our revenue goal. And so it's not a volume game. And so the question is, like, to your point, Dominic, about scale and like scaling referrals or networking, what was the term? Allison Davis talked through the term multipliers.
Yeah.
And so like, who are the people in your network who are the multipliers? So one person you can sit down with, really build that relationship with, but they are constantly talking to your clients, right? So like in HR, that could be an employment lawyer, right? So they are working, their clients are your clients. So they have a whole slate of clients, an employment law firm, and you just need them to think of you a couple times a year and refer you into their clients. So that's like a multiplier relationship referral. So there's different kind of ways to try to scale when at the core, you're really just trying to build the trust. Yeah.
Exactly. And CPAs and benefit brokers are also really great for those of you who are looking for referral partners as well. They are awesome.
Thank you. I wanted to double click on this because I think that you're making some really valid points, but there does appear to be a relationship between how much you invest in your growth. And so I think that the data shows us that you can absolutely spend less than $100 per month and still find yourself in the 11 plus client range, 6 to 10 client range. This is not a pay to play profession because you can build it on the back of a network. That said, there does appear to be a relationship between how much you spend and how much you grow. And consultants who do invest in marketing do predictably see better results. I'm curious, under $100 could mean no spend altogether, right? So this median spend of $1,200, that's going off of you're spending $100. It could very well be you spend no money. What would you say are the biggest reasons that might prevent a consultant from investing in marketing spend?
Noise. Just noise. Where do I spend? Which direction do I go? I don't know this sector. I don't understand how to market, and I'm being bombarded. So I tell you what, I'll just do nothing. Right? I think there's a lot of that, and I'll use my network. I think that's got a lot to do with it.
I actually have a question, Dominic, and sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I can't remember in the survey if marketing included like networking groups.
Oh, good question.
So we do have networking events or associations. So I would count that as groups. I did have one person say FPP !
Oh, that's not why I asked. I was thinking about my own business because the investment into getting in the right rooms, I think, is where I see a lot of people's spending, putting in those investments. But again, with the ultimate goal of that's for those conversations. But I think the data certainly makes sense. It wasn't surprising. I think something we talk about a lot is people aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are or hope they are. The reason you post on LinkedIn is so that the person you worked with 3 jobs ago knows that you're even doing this work, right? People just don't think about you as much as maybe sometimes you think. And so getting in front of people so that the awareness is there is the goal. And so choosing which channels that is a little bit more difficult because trust building on a cold spam thing is much less likely to work than trust building in that $3,000 a year networking community that has a CEO you knew. So I don't know where the spend went, but that's just kind of a take on why it is important to be out there because people just don't know what you're up to.
I think that marketing spend might even be a phrase that can be used so many different ways. When some people think about marketing spend, they're thinking I'm paying for advertisements on Facebook.
Yes.
That is marketing spend. It's also a premium Canva subscription. So you can make quality content you share on LinkedIn, and you've got LinkedIn Premium, and you're scouting for leads with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That's marketing spend too. And so I think that when you look at marketing as a category, there are absolutely marketing strategies that probably will never work for HR consultants because of what this work is. But there are ways of allocating your dollars into investments that can predictably incur growth. And so I definitely think that this will be an area that I know a lot of HR consultants will be very focused on in 2026. Our survey does show that finding new clients is one of the top challenges in running an HR consulting business. And so when I take a step back, that to me suggests that while referrals and word of mouth do perform well, there might even be a gap where consultants are wanting more clients than that network is producing. So I will push forward to the next section, which is commenting on how HR consultants price and package. We asked a question in the survey about what your top performing revenue model was. And some of that was hybrid pricing, hourly pricing, fixed fee project work, or retainers. And then we've asked a follow-up question about what % of their revenue was ongoing versus one-off. And so we got a really clear view of how HR consultants are performing in terms of their pricing packages. And I think the biggest thing that stood out is that there are very few HR consultants that run a single revenue model. Most retainer-based businesses will often take on a few projects here and there, and project-based consultants will often take on a few retainer clients if they can. I'm curious to get your perspective on that, because that speaks to a much more flexible approach to capturing revenue. I'm curious if you had thoughts.
It is unsurprising that we see so many consultants start out charging an hourly rate because they're learning their trade, particularly, I'd say even up to the first 5 years, it takes to really learn to build a business. And that initial part of, okay, let me learn how I build my templates, does come from pricing hourly to then be able to go on to sell retained packages and projects. And I think being able, what I'm hoping we continue to see is that blend of retained projects and outcomes related and value related packages being sold with a blend of projects as well. Because I think if you can have what we've been talking about, 6 or 7 clients that are on retainer every year, you minimize the risk on you of if you lose one, then it's going to hurt. But at the same time, if you can then increase and bring a project in, and I think we'll see this go up next year, then you really start to increase your margins.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen you comment on this on Facebook before, where your business shouldn't only be retainers. You should have that really great project that you land, or 1 or 2 projects, and give yourself the flexibility as you move into new work, so that you're not just finding yourself with half of your business complete a contract and now how do I get my next batch of clients in the door? So I definitely think there's a lot of variability that we see there in terms of how HR consultants price and package. I think we do also see a bit of difference in terms of your highest in-house title before coming into this space. We do see respondents all the way, through HR generalist and HR manager, through CPO, CHRO. Elles, I'd love to get your insights on why different level consultants take different types of work.
Yeah, I think when we talk about pricing, it is just like you would do a compensation evaluation in a company, right? Like you are looking at what's the work that's being done and what's the value of the work that's being done, and that's how it's being priced. So the report made a lot of sense from a revenue perspective and diversification of revenue. I think something that's really important just to say out loud, because it's not often consciously thought about, is you are building a business, like you are a business owner. And so you can go after all different kinds of revenue in this new or experienced venture. And so when you slice it into like, well, for fractional HR work, are you doing retainer or hourly? There's maybe a preference of retainer there if you're talking about projects. So I think diversification of revenue is really important. I think I've seen too many people where, to your point, they have like 1 or 2 stable clients, the retainers end, and then they're not also getting little pieces of revenue. We were just having a conversation in the community the other day of like, what are other ways that you have revenue coming in so that when it's dry, you at least still have other things. So diversification is really important. And also something to note is you can have different pricing with the same client, right? Like I have clients that are on retainers, but then I'll go and do offsites, and that's a project fee. So I was really happy to see that it was diversification, because you are building a business from your skills and your expertise. And so there's lots of different ways to explore and get creative with that. There's strategic referral partnerships, there's productization that you can do. And so building up that brand and that business and that expertise and leveraging it in the way that is valued to you is great to see that people are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have this conversation with a lot of consultants just for using the software and building out projects for different clients. And I think having different billing structures, even for the same client, offers you an ability to manage scope creep more effectively. You can have a retainer that does not also include leadership development. You can have a retainer that doesn't include payroll services, right? And so I think that can provide the consultant with a bit more of a framework for what they do and don't do for clients.
Yeah, scope creep is a whole other hour that we could talk about.
Yeah,
scope creep with clients. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and take you over to one of our last points on the report. And this is just overall business confidence. I think when we talked about consultants who rate their satisfaction, overwhelmingly, we see most consultants are quite satisfied with their business. We do see that they generally are confident about growth. But the one thing that we do see on the lower side is about only 1 in 4 HR consultants believe that they are priced correctly. Sam, I'll throw this one to you. Talk about why so many consultants might feel like they're not getting properly compensated for the value they bring.
A lot of the time is, again, when we look at the population who participated in this is still a skill set that everyone's learning. How do I learn to sell value, for example, over time? How do I productize what I got? What, to Alice's point a moment ago, the cross-selling and upselling piece. So this will continue to get better. And I can give you an example. We started working with someone recently and they were comfortable charging something at $2,000. We instantly knew they should have been, the starting out the gate was 7,500. But actually working on their confidence to ask the right questions to sell that then becomes something. So a lot of this is just experience. A lot of this is about how you ask and when you ask. And as part of this, being able to build up that bank of evidence, just as we did when we were in-house, to say, actually, look at the outcomes I got here. So, many of us who had SLT in board positions, we had to come to that board table to actually talk about the outcomes and the work that we delivered. This is no different. The wonderful thing is we're now doing it for our clients, and that alone will help increase the pricing. So again, I think a lot of this will see that the confidence levels go up if this same cohort were to fill it in over the next 12 months. And now's a great time for those of you on the call, if you're thinking about testing and asking and increasing your prices, give it a go. If you've done great work this year, ask for more next year, because your clients need you. You've demonstrated you can do it. So why not ask for more?
Yeah. One of the things that we did with the report, which you can dive into after this call, is we looked at consultants who rated themselves highly across all 3 of these categories: pricing confidence, growth confidence, business satisfaction. And the cohort of consultants who had the highest responses across all 3 of them, what we wanted to do was see what we could see in terms of differences in other areas of the business relative to the general cohort. And something that we saw is that consultants who are highly confident and satisfied are generally 40% higher in terms of their hourly effective rates. They're charging more money. And so that definitely speaks to the pricing confidence, and acquire about 50% more clients per year. And so I think that when you layer all these things together, there are different levers to getting your business into a sustainable place. And I think pricing is one piece of that. Having a reliable growth system in place so that you don't find yourself in a position where you're wondering where that next client's going to come from. But we could spend all day talking about this. We've got about 5 minutes to answer a few quick questions. I see one here. Is there an industry standard for an HR consulting hourly rate? I would say our data on average did show that it's about $150 to $160, but there's so much that changes based on the types of clients you're working with, the level that you had in-house, the structure of the agreement itself. Sam, do you have recommendations on, if you're just getting started, to cut through the noise and just pick a rate?
Yeah, I would love to see everyone start at 150.
Okay.
I think that's a good starting point, particularly going into 2026. It also takes into consideration multi-states and other states. So, for example, obviously, New York, parts of California, you can charge much higher, Dallas, than you can in, say, some of the smaller towns in the Midwest. But that's where I'd love to see people start if you have to go that way.
Absolutely. I see a question here from Katie from marketing. Does that include conference event sponsorships? Have you or others seen success from that? So in terms of the question itself, I would say that it might fit into the networking or partnership programs there. We didn't split it out, but Elles, I'd love to throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on conference or events?
Yeah, I think getting clear on why you're attending and who you're trying to reach when you're there. If you're in HR and you're going to an HR conference, then maybe your target is in-house CPOs that you want to supplement their work for, or it's referral partners. If you find someone who does L&D in the consulting space and you do strategic business partner or whatever it is, or if you are targeting the nonprofit space, then you go to a nonprofit conference and you surround yourself with that industry and you try to be the only HR person in the room. So it's just really like the investment is, why are you going? Or if you're going to a conference and it's just to be with community, that's fine too. But it's like, just be clear about why you're going, the audience, and like who you really want to build relationships with. And then you can kind of justify that that's a good test to see if that brings out leads. And I think an important expectation to set is leads does not mean you're going to walk away with like contracts in your hand. It means you're going to build relationships authentically, hopefully, best way to do it. You're going to meet some people who now think of you. And then in 2, 3, 6, 9 months, hopefully they call you and say, I have a need, or you follow up and you have another coffee chat with them. But it is a mid to long-term game when you're talking about such an important role in the organization. And sometimes you just have those happy hour chats where they hire you the next day. That's fine too. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got about 5 minutes left. I do see a comment from Rosaura. I would recommend attending local Chamber of Commerce events. I've actually heard this one quite a bit. A really strong, like localized way of getting with the community. I also see from Trevor on the monthly marketing spend, which has been the most effective pathway, targeted ads, social, etc. When your budget is limited, I would say that any marketing spend that allows you to start that relationship building process is the way to go. Like I would never recommend a paid advertisement because there's just no connection happening between you and the client or business owner. So allocating dollars where you can expand your network and then nurture from there, I would say is probably the best way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the Q&A there. I'll jump over here. If you're ready to scale your HR consulting business, visit us online to learn more about how Shrlock can help scale your HR consulting business. Join the newsletter.
Also, I need to shout out Dominic for this being like the first webinar that he's hosted, and also all these technical things. And you got QR codes, you got Stripe codes, you got kudos to you.
Thank you.
I'm just on Google Meet over here, like, who wants to hang out?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. As mentioned, it is our first webinar. We're actually planning a webinar series throughout the next year, starting from how to do outreach to new potential prospects, how to message and position, how to use LinkedIn to use content and comments to drive engagement. So we'll be launching these one per month. We would love to see you there. Outside of that, I wanted to say thank you to our partners today. This would not be possible without you to both participate in this conversation and to share this with your community so we could get such valuable insights. Thank you so much.
I love sharing the stage with you, Sam, always.
Yeah.
Nick.
Where can people find you after this call?
Elles.
Oh, okay. On LinkedIn, Elles Skony, and then fractionalpeoplepeople.com, or follow us on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you, Sam.
So yeah, I live on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn and also look up the business club, mindabilitybusinessclub.com. We'd love to welcome some of you if you're looking to build your business, and join FPP too. Well worth it.
Join her club.
Thank you all so much. You'll have a great rest of your day, a great week, and a happy holidays. You take care. All right. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.